Robert Mitchell, the last time we talked, almost 2 years ago, the story as I knew it was that your brother was flying a mission in July 1944 out of Italy.
Right.
He was over Austria.
Right.
He was either shot down or had some sort of malfunction. The plane went down.
Right.
A club in Austria that tracked these down the planes
Right.
knew where the plane was.
Right.
And apparently, researchers, some with the U.S. government, got to that site for one time, and so they knew where the site was. But the owner of the land would not let people on to do further
Correct.
investigation, and that was the big mystery of the moment. Why?
He died. The landowner passed away.
Okay, so let's pick up the story. So what happens
The son
then?
has the property now.
Okay.
And the son, they contacted, and he said, I don't care where you dig or when you dig, as long as it's not during deer season.
Okay.
Which I thought was kind of ironic.
Because it's a heavily wooded season.
And you'll see pictures of it in this, of the site where it went down.
Can you show us that book? You were telling me about that book before we started
This
recording.
is presented by the Air Force to me, and it's got all the information in there, every letter concerning his disappearance, letters to his parents, copies, everything is in this book. There's 149 pages in here. The Air Force have compiled all of this, and
this is a book related to the recovery of your brother.
right.
You were showing me a picture before we started recording. They actually show you all of the bones
That's correct. All the bones that were found.
So those are the bones that they found at the site.
Right. These
Wow.
are the bones found at the site.
At the site in Austria. Well, let's. So, did you ever find out? I mean, one of the questions when we talked almost 2 years ago, was why wouldn't this man allow people onto his property to?
We do not know.
His son never found out, or never
unless
said?
he was a Nazi sympathizer.
Yeah.
And didn't want us to recover them. I even sent this man a family picture that was the last family picture we made before he went overseas in 1943.
Right.
And I sent him a picture of the family trying to soften him up.
Soften his heart a little
and
bit.
it did no good whatsoever.
Okay. And the son never offered an explanation?
No, no.
But the son seemed like he was agreeable.
Very agreeable, very agreeable.
So this man who owns the property, you know the crash site is there, he won't let you on, he passes away, his son now owns the property, his son says, sure, you can come on and look. Were you contacted immediately and notified that now the site was open?
Yes, by Senator Bozeman.
Senator Bozeman's office called you.
Right.
So Senator Bozeman's office called you. They said the site's open, we're sending in a team.
Yeah, they contacted the son and got approval to go in. It's got pictures of the people doing digging and sifting out the dirt and everything to recover all the parts.
Wow.
They recovered all of his teeth.
All of his teeth.
And what happened was this was a good thing, whoever buried him, because this is in the deep forest, and animals could have gotten to his body, and no telling what would have happened. So somebody buried him in a shallow grave, and this protected all the bones. Look at this. Look at this picture of the jaw and the teeth.
Was there any sort of marker at the grave? You know, here lies some unknown American.
There were originally, there were parts to the plane, 2 parts to the plane on the surface. Those parts had serial numbers on them. This team in Austria called Lockheed in California, gave them the serial number of the plane on the parts, and that was it. That was the plane.
They knew immediately this is the plane.
Yes.
It was on. Yeah.
Yes. And they tell me that this is just someone told me that when computers became available, Lockheed put all the serial numbers of planes they manufactured during World War II in the computer. So all you have to do is give them a number, and they can tell you.
And then they can say
tell you
yeah.
the type plane it was and when it was manufactured and the whole 9 yards.
And then they can trace that specific
Right.
plane to your
Right.
brother Donald.
See this?
Wow. Yeah.
This was made by a jeweler out of 2 wings, sterling silver wings, that was in his belongings in Italy, and he didn't return. So they sent his teammates sent all the parts and everything that was left,
Yeah.
including 2 money orders for $300 each.
Wow.
Sent them all home. And those 2 sets of silver wings, I had this made.
Wow. How long ago did you have that made?
Probably 4 or 5 years ago.
They found the bones, a lot of these bones. They found the jaws and the teeth. Did they find any other things, dog tags?
Well, they
anything
found,
else?
no, there was no dog tags.
Okay.
Which
Boots or anything like that?
they found part of a boot and a heel that was part that they found. And so...
Was there anything that came home that, of course, the remains will be buried at the National Cemetery in Fayetteville, Arkansas?
Yeah, they're coming into Tulsa Friday, the bones, and the funeral home will they'll be cremated, and they're going to be put in a niche. A niche is called a little box about this big and that tall. And it's real funny. He has a missing in action stone, and they will put some kind of an insignia on that stone which will signify that he's not missing anymore. They found it.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, and at least in some places it's called a rosette that they put next to the
Yeah,
the
see,
name.
here's part of a boot.
So they found that. Now, is there anything that you have possession of?
No, well, I have possession of the 4 pieces of a Bulova watch that the Air Force issued him a Bulova watch. All the pilots had Bulova watches.
Yeah.
And I got 4 pieces of it. I got the dial, which has the numbers on it.
Yeah.
See, this has been buried for 77 years.
Wow.
You know, that's a long time.
That's a long time.
And so
And do you have these things then in a small box or some?
they're in plastic bags, and here's the parts to the watch.
Let's see. Let's take a look at that.
This is the parts to the watch. And it's got engraving on the back that it was manufactured by Bulova.
Yeah.
And had the serial number on it and all that
Wow.
stuff. They
September.
told me that it might be 2 years before it would be identified, but one thing that was really the kicker, he had a bridge on his teeth on the left-hand side, and that was in the file that I got from the Pentagon back in 1997.
The
They
dental
had
records.
his
Yeah.
teeth, and they had that bridge. A
So they
picture of the
found
bridge.
that.
So when they found that matched the parts, you know, so
Wow.
it was automatic.
So they said, hold on because this might be a long process, but it's turned out to just go
it was
very, very quickly.
short. It was very short, yeah.
How did you get the news?
Well, they called me and said that the identification was made. They just called me and said, we've made identification. It's not going to be a long process. So.
We know who it is. It's Donald Mitchell.
Right.
Henry Donald Mitchell.
Henry Donald Mitchell. Right.
What was your response?
Well, I was pleased because
Yeah.
I'll be 91 next month. I can't live forever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I was excited. It was very pleasing, you know. I've got a stack, his war file and all that stuff upstairs. I've got a stack of letters and stuff this tall that I've collected over the last, well, I started looking in 1997. I got to take a plane ride with my brother. He was working at Starnes Flying Service in Conway. He didn't want to be drafted, so he and two of his buddies joined the Air Force at the same time, and he was the only one that made fighter school. The other two, one flew a B-17, one flew a B-24, and after they completed their missions in Europe, they got to come home, and they met with my family. See, I was only 13, 14 years old, and I don't remember too much, you know, at that age.
Sure.
But
yeah.
he would borrow sometime an airplane. See, our farm at Harmon, Arkansas was only about 18 or 19 miles from Siloam Springs.
Right.
So he would borrow an airplane, fly over and buzz us, and holler out the window, meet me in Siloam, and shut the window.
They do that
And
from
we
the
would
plane.
go pick him up, bring him home for lunch, and then take him back to the airport. And the last time he did this, he came home, and we took him back over there, and of course, I was like 12 or 13, and he said, come on, I'll take you for a plane ride. So I got in the airplane, and we flew around Siloam Springs, and we came back and landed, and over on the right-hand side, there was a Ford trimotor airplane. And I didn't know what it was, but I've learned a lot about airplanes, and it was a Ford trimotor. Big crowd around it. And the gentleman there that was speaking to the crowd was, and I cannot remember his name, but he started Eastern Airlines, and he was a World War I ace.
Wow.
And he was there to make a commencement address. And I cannot remember
This
his
is at
name.
John Brown University?
Yeah, John Brown University. Right.
And this is your brother who's flying over where you lived and say meet me in Siloam?
Well, yeah. He
think that
did
would-
that twice. And my mother was just, oh gosh, she said he got down so low that he's going to kill us. He's going to kill him.
I think
he's
he'd
going
get
to kill
thrown in jail
himself,
today
you know.
for,
So
yeah.
anyway,
Wow.
that was the last time he got to come home.
You say that was the last time, you know, when he was alive that he came home. His remains are going to fly into Tulsa, and then they're going to be back here in Northwest Arkansas.
Right.
Do you feel like, in a sense, he is now finally coming back home?
Oh yeah, sure. They wanted to know on the little box where the ashes will be. They wanted to know what I wanted to put across the bottom, and I had them put "Welcome home, brother."
Wow.
So anyway.
Yeah. Wow. Those pieces, those little watch pieces you have must be really important. I mean, in terms of not, you know, you wouldn't be able to sell them for anything, but important just in a sort of a physical connection to your brother.
Sure, they're important.
In that respect.
Yeah, they're very important.
Yeah.
And this is very important too. Time I'd like for you to read some of the letters in here that were written to my mother and father. Every letter that was written to them is in this book.
Wow. Yeah.
And so really it's gosh, I couldn't believe it. Like this one was written on December the 7th, 1944. The Army Effects Bureau has received some personal effects belonging to your son. the property is being forwarded to you in 2 cartons. This is the copy of that letter that was
Wow.
sent to my parents,
Yeah.
you know, from 1944. So this book means a lot to me.
I can imagine.
See, there's a picture of the crash site.
In Austria. Wow. So this book you have then, it's got photographs of the site, it's got photographs of the remains that were found, it has letters sent to your parents. Does it also just have an overview of the operation? You know, what they did when they were there? And
I had no idea. See, here's also a picture that they uncovered that show part of the bones, but they haven't taken them out of the ground yet.
yeah.
It's the most impressive record of what happened that I have ever seen.
It is impressive. I wish this story were better known, because there's a lot of complaining about the government, and probably for good reason.
Sure.
But the government is clearly,
Oh boy.
also in this case, has done really remarkable
Oh, I
work.
was impressed with this.
Yeah.
Really impressed of all the details that they have in it. I had 2 nieces that sent their DNA in because they wanted to know if I had a sister. And I said, yes, I had a sister, but she's passed away. And they said, did she have any children? And I said, she had 2 daughters and 1 son. And they said, we need the DNA from those 2 girls. So they sent their DNA. I sent mine, I don't know where they sent theirs, but I sent mine to Dover Air Force Base.
Mm.
And they sent their DNA in.
Nearly 2 years ago, you and I were in this exact same place. By the way, you haven't changed at all in 2 years.
Shoot.
But nearly 2 years ago, you and I were in this exact same place. And I wouldn't say that you had given up hope, but my description, you know, if somebody asked me 2 months ago, my description was, you know, he hadn't given up hope, but he wasn't hopeful.
Well, yeah, I didn't know whether I was going to live that long.
There are family members out there who are discouraged. They've, you know, if they haven't given up yet, you know, they feel like they're close to giving up. What word would you have, given your experience? And each experience is going to be different. But given your experience, what word would you have for those family members of the missing who are feeling weary?
It's hard to say. It depends on the circumstances.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's a lady in Springdale whose relative lived at the Harmon community, and he and my brother were the only 2 lost in World War II. He was in the Marines, and on an island they were invading, and he was driving this landing craft to the beach, and a shell hit it almost on the spot where he was standing, and he was blown to 10,000 pieces. There's no recovery there. That's the bad part,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And I know there are many more like that will never be recorded because there's nothing left.
Just to end up, if we pretended that the camera is Mr. Reasoner, it's Congressman Womack, it's Senator Bozeman, it's then Congressman Asa Hutchinson, now the governor of Arkansas, and all the other people who played roles, the people whose names you don't know who were involved in this. What's your word to them?
Help more people, because there's some out there, I know there's some out there that will be recovered,
Yeah.
and to the people whose relatives, and you can't tell, of course, if I had passed away, nothing would have happened. If I had not been here, no recovery would have been made,
So your own asking questions and your own effort helped to get the machine going.
Right. But they need to
Yeah.
get the war file if it's available.
Yeah.
Now, if those war files back 77 years ago have been destroyed in that fire,
In St. Louis, yeah.
yeah, it's nothing will happen.
That's tough.
But when
yeah.
I got that war file, that's when I started wondering, what can I do to maybe find out what happened to him?
Wow.
And
Now, do we know, we weren't sure 2 years ago whether he was shot down or whether there was a malfunction.
we still don't know.
Still don't know.
But apparently, he was in a dogfight, and the Germans reported that they shot down a P-38 on that date in Austria.
So there's a good chance then.
Yeah. So it's a good chance he was shot down, and it's a good chance that there was no fuel on board, because if there had been fuel on board, the force of hitting the ground would have caused a fire. There was no
Right.
fire.
Yeah. Okay. So good evidence that he was probably shot down, but also good evidence that the plane was pretty much out of fuel.
Right.
So it could have been either thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Would the dogfight explain the lack of fuel?
No.
Okay.
No one saw the plane getting hit,
Oh, I see. Okay.
because the other pilots to other planes, they were in a dogfight too.
Right.
So they had completed their mission, apparently. See, this happened like at 23,000 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah. Do you know, does the evidence indicate that the plane sort of crashed?
yes.
I mean, as,
His skull, you can see the bones here. They didn't recover all the parts to his skull because they were torn apart. So it had some force when it hit the ground.
right, yeah. So probably meaning a crash, not a landing, not
Right,
an emergency
right.
landing, something like that, that just went bad.
They did a fantastic job digging this up, let me tell you. Because
Gosh, that is
they had to
something.
dig up the grave that he was buried in, you know.
Is there any sort of marker there now, or was the site just excavated and then returned to nature completely?
Well, it was returned to nature.
Yeah.
It was smoothed over because they told the landowner they would leave the land exactly as they found it.
Yeah.
One of the things that people don't understand, that part of Austria was controlled by the Russians after the war.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no getting in there to look anywhere.
I see.
And how long? Well, from the end of World War II up until Russia had changed a little bit, and that was many years.
Yeah, that's right.
You never know.
Sure. So it could have been Russian soldiers who found the plane and
Could
buried it
have.
there, or
Could
Austrian
have, and
civilians.
just buried the corpse, you know.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Well, Mr. Mitchell, it was great to talk with you a couple years ago, although the story was inconclusive, and then just a week ago or so, I saw the article that your brother's remains had been recovered,
Right.
and so I was immediately in touch. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we shut
No,
it down?
that's about it.
That's
I'll
about
just
it.
be glad when it's finally over and concluded, because it's been a long, hard battle,
Yeah.
believe me.